Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming to the Warrant Committee this evening. We have an agenda I'd like to try and move through because we have some guests. The first order of business is the discussion of our clerk. As I mentioned to some of you, the subcommittee responsible for hiring the clerk has interviewed and come to a decision, and we will communicate that decision to Paige Ippolito and ask her to put our preferred candidate through the process, bring her on board. I'm optimistic that we will have the clerk in place for if not the next meeting, then next week's meeting. But that's very good progress because that will help the flow of information and the workflow that much easier and take a little pressure off the chair and the secretary. We have before us a couple of things that we've been considering. As far as I know, the subcommittees have all met with the respective department heads and have posed the questions that they came up with to these department heads. So when the respective budget heads, with the exception of DPW.
DPW and general government.
And general government.
General government, they have the questions.
Okay, they
but
do.
We have not met with the
And DPW, I believe, is meeting tomorrow
morning.
That's right, okay. So by Wednesday, I'm hoping everybody will have met or had their questions, and then we'll be able to schedule in the visits and the testimony, if you will, for the questions that have been posed by the subcommittees to be brought before the whole Warrant Committee. So we should be able, I think, in 2 or 3 meetings to go through the large departments, the schools, police, fire, DPW, cemetery, library, if they would like to come in. If they want to designate the town administrator to speak on their behalf, that's fine. Park and Recs, we can handle it that way. But I think, generally speaking, most of the heavy lifting has been accomplished. So congratulations, everybody, for getting through that. It was a good effort, and I think it'll make pulling the warrant articles together that much easier when we go to do that in a couple weeks. We do have a couple of guests, and the agenda actually calls for Alex Whiteside to come and talk about the zoning articles, but I'm going to ask him to wait a second and invite John O'Rourke to come and talk to us about the municipal aggregation warrant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming.
I'll just give you some cards to pass around.
Thank you.
And here's the warrant article. And just some general information about the electricity aggregation.
Thank you. Please.
Mr. Chairman, you may be aware that approximately 6 weeks ago, I met with the town administrator, and we discussed community electricity aggregation for Milton. He was quite enthused about it. He had been talking previously with the president of Sustainable Milton, and that brought the interest and why he called me in to speak to him. About 3 weeks ago, I met with the Board of Selectmen, and they referred to you the warrant article that we suggested to them. Essentially, this warrant article, which is extremely simple, and it's one that is acceptable to the Department of Public Utilities, which is important because they are the ones that are basically the arbiters of the plans that are done. We work with about 41 municipalities here in Massachusetts, and this article has passed town meeting in 35 of those. The others were councils, and there was a bit of a different motion for councils, but this is the motion that, again, is acceptable to DPU and has passed 30 through 35 towns with most of the time unanimous approval. Occasionally, there's some minor opposition, but usually it goes through pretty quickly. The second sheet I handed you is just some important points about aggregation and how it works and the benefits of it. I understand the limited time, so I'll just open it up for questions.
Could you give us a little bit of an overview of how,
Yes.
because we're just seeing this for the first time.
Yeah, how does this work?
How does aggregation work?
Yes, how does the aggregation work? We're interested to know that.
Back in 1997, there was the deregulation of the electricity industry, and President of the Senate, Stan Rosenberg, was the one that wrote the municipal aggregation law, which is essentially a page and a half long. It's very simple, and it just authorizes municipalities to aggregate the load of their residents and businesses so that that load can be put out to a competitive bid and basically do better than the utility rates. The reason for that is because the utilities have to go out to bid at two very specific times of the year, whether the market is good or not, whereas in aggregation situations, there's more strategic planning in terms of going out to bid, and that will get a lower price because you can go out to bid when the market is better. Right now, there are approximately 127 municipalities in Massachusetts that have adopted some form of municipal aggregation, and essentially we have 41 of those towns, about 937,000 residents, and about 335,000 households. And essentially, all of our aggregations are saving their residents money. As we come further east with our municipalities, we find that a lot of them want to use aggregation as a way of providing more green energy in the mix for their residents. And that has worked out very well because we essentially use Massachusetts Class 1 renewable energy certificates, which essentially add to the number of projects here in Massachusetts that are renewable, mostly wind, some anaerobic digestion, and some solar. But essentially, that's the way this works. Questions?
Yeah, John, are we aggregating solely as a town, or are we taking our demand or our usage and adding it to other towns? And again, how does our profile look compared to other towns? Because I know in some cases you have where the aggregation model works for one town and doesn't work for another town.
Essentially, we have done both. We have situations where we've done groups of towns. Each town is autonomous in and of itself, but you go out to bid together. We have 23 towns that have gone out to bid together, and essentially, they're mostly in Bristol and Plymouth counties. It's the largest aggregation in Massachusetts, and it's the second largest aggregation in the country. Each town, depending upon its profile, can either choose to go out with other towns for a competitive bid or to go out by themselves. Obviously, if you go out with a larger group, the chances of getting a better rate is more palatable for that.
Okay, great, thanks.
Is there a minimum number of consumers that you would need to aggregate together?
No. Essentially, we work with the major national suppliers who are very anxious to get into the residential market in aggregation because essentially most of the commercial and industrial market has been sated. There's not a lot of business, not a lot of expansion to go there. So essentially, when we go out to bid, we generally bring in 3 or 4 major suppliers who bid on lengths of 12, 18, 24, 30, 36 months for contracts. Each town gets to choose which length of time they want based on the bid and how attractive that bid is compared to the utility rates.
I'm sure in having the conversation with the town administrator, there was some sort of a discussion about some ballpark figures that we're looking at, some sort of a market analysis done for what the benefit for the town of Milton will be. I was wondering if you could share that information.
Well, essentially, when we go out to bid, we look to try to get savings of about 10% for residents on their supply portion of the bill. That's what we aim for, and we have gotten very close to that in most of our aggregations. Essentially, right now, because of the rates of National Grid, which is 12,673, and Eversource, which is 13,157. Okay, our aggregations are at 10,13. So there's a substantial savings over this next adjustment period.
How long does it take to implement aggregation?
We can move as quickly as the municipality wants to move. The regulatory process at this point in time between the Department of Energy Resources and the Department of Public Utilities is taking about 6 to 7 months. So once a plan is established, once it starts with passing the article at town meeting, we develop a plan with the Board of Selectmen, depending upon their guidance to us. We go first to the Department of Energy Resources. They go over the plan carefully to make sure it's in compliance with the law. And essentially, we've been by them so many times at this point. They know our plans. Our attorney has 30 years' experience dealing with DOER and DPU, so they're very comfortable with what we submit to them. We have at this point, they've given us permission, instead of having people come in and face-to-face, we usually do a phone conference with their attorney. The attorney goes over the plan and basically says to them, your plan's in compliance, we'll give you a consultation letter. That consultation letter is basically permission for us to submit the plan to the Department of Public Utilities, which goes through an approval process, which is essentially they go over the plan, they have a public hearing, they ask for discovery, if needed, perhaps clarification of language, because essentially these plans are fluid depending upon how the department has ruled in other areas. So essentially they may ask for clarification of language, minor changes or tweaks. Once that's done, there's an order issued by them to approve the plan. Once the plan is approved, the municipality can go out to bid competitively for electricity supply, either by themselves or with other towns.
Tom?
A couple of questions. Number one, the supply side of an electric bill, approximately what percentage is about half? or-
It's about half.
About half, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So 10% of half your bill would be
Is
what
it-
most communities are experiencing?
Yes.
In terms of savings. Would the town be entering into a contract with Good Energy or
We have a services agreement with the town, which is a very user-friendly
Okay.
agreement. The town enters into a supply contract with the competitive supplier who wins the bid.
Right, so that's a competitive process.
Right.
Is the contract or the agreement with Good Energy or whoever else subject to 30B in terms of
Energy
being
and
competitive with the
energy-related contracts are not subject to 30B procurement.
Okay.
You said this was national? Is this a national program? Is this throughout the United States, or is it?
Massachusetts was the first state to put together a municipal aggregation law. Every other state, and there are 6 other states that basically have aggregation. based on the Massachusetts law. And then there are about 10 states that are now considering it in their legislatures to pass municipal aggregation laws, because they understand the advantages of having each municipality go out to bid for their residents.
Has anyone opted out of this, or is there a way that you could opt out if it doesn't, if you don't reach the goals? that-
Any resident can opt out at any time for any reason with no termination fees.
Can the town?
Once the town signs a contract, the
Bound to the
town is in that
contract.
contract
To the term.
for the term. However,
At the end of the term.
all the town is doing is saying, supply us with electricity.
Yep.
Virtually, if for some reason the residents, all the residents could basically opt out if they wanted to.
Is there a fee you charge or something with the contract with Good Energy for providing this?
There's no
Facilitation services?
out-of-pocket expense for the municipality. The only time needed is decision-making time for the municipality. We're paid by the competitive supplier.
Okay.
We're paid 1 mil per kilowatt hour. So essentially, if you burn a 100-watt light bulb for 10 hours, that's 1 kilowatt hour. We get a tenth of a penny for that.
How long's the contracts for normally?
It depends on what the town wants to do. It can either be, most of the time, it's either a year, could be 3 years. We have the latest bid that we did for the 23 towns, mostly, again, in Bristol County. They start this month on their renewal. They were in for a 2-year contract first. Now they're starting for a 3-year contract. We went out to bid for them last March because our analysts told us that was the best time to go out to bid. We got them together. We said, now's the time to go out to bid rather than in the fall. They all got together. They all agreed on a 3-year term because that was the sweet spot. That was the lowest rate over the term. We found that 3 years was the best way to go. But again, it's up to every town to make that decision.
Thank you.
Tom, did you have another question?
I think it was just answered, so.
Okay.
fine.
I just do one more follow-up. So, the question of, is there a minimum demand, for the town in terms of, purchase supply? Because,
No.
I mean, the whole idea of aggregation is there's some price certainty, and then there's some load certainty. And if we're gonna get the best price, I'd imagine we need to have some idea of what that minimum threshold is on the demand side.
Well, essentially, when we go out to bid, we want to go out to bid with more than one town, so we aggregate those loads. Basically, you can count on about 80 to 85% of the residents in that program, okay? Because some residents have already agreed with a third-party supplier for their supply. And essentially, so it works out to 80 to 85% based on the town. So that's what you can count on, and that's what the suppliers count on when we go out to bid with them.
So,
Did you have a, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
go ahead.
I just wanted to get clarification. So if we agree to this and we eventually go through the process, town meeting agrees, does that mean when things get enacted that the whole town, all the residents and businesses are included in this, and that residents then have to opt out?
It's an
If they
opt-out, it's
have-
an opt-out program.
So they're already in, and then they have to purposely opt out?
Well, there's plenty of marketing that we do
Okay.
before then to educate and do outreach to the public so they know exactly what's going on.
Yes.
We
Because,
do public meetings, we do advertising, we do flyers, handouts. For instance, at town meeting, if you want to put this on your warrant, I would be there to answer questions. I would have a handout, a flyer that the residents could look at. Before that, we would do some marketing so they would know what's happening. Okay.
so if a resident, after this starts, they already had chosen their energy provider or something and happy with it, they'd have to opt out and redo that if it's not the
No,
same?
we don't even contact them. The only ones who are contacted are on the basic service of a national grid. You're in the national grid territory. So anyone who's on basic service of National Grid would be contacted. Anyone who has chosen a supplier is already made that decision, we don't contact them. If those people, when their contract expires, wants to come into the program, they can do that. But essentially, passing this warrant article doesn't commit the town to anything. It's just a matter of the starting point that the law says you need to do.
Yeah, I was just wondering if we actually start the program after passing the warrant, going through, if it automatically commits all the residents to something. I mean, I know that's several steps down the,
I guess it doesn't
Process,
pass.
so
We'd have to get
Yeah.
it approved
This-
to let the
Yes,
selectmen
if it
begin
would.
the process.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the initial step.
yes,
And then, as you go further down the road, again, there's plenty of marketing to let the residents know what is going on and how it'll be affected. Everyone gets what's known as a customer notification letter. All those people on the basic service of National Grid, it would say to them, here's what the town has done. They have decided on this competitive supplier. The rates are in a chart showing them, what their options are and how they can, if they want to stay in the program, they don't have to do anything. If they want to opt out, they send in a card. What many towns do is they have not only a basic, a default option, but they have other options. For instance, most of our municipalities here in eastern Massachusetts have a 5% additional green in their program, but you can opt down to the renewable portfolio standard of Massachusetts, which is now 13% green. All the electricity anyone gets in Massachusetts now has 13% renewable energy in it. There would be an additional 5% for that default. You can opt down to the basic level so that, people can't say to municipal officials, well, you're forcing me to put green energy in my mix, okay? So that gives the municipal officials basically political cover from that. Then there's another option where you can go 100% green if you want. So it's, there's an option in there for everybody.
okay.
Tom, did you have another question following up?
I guess it was on the, you mentioned that there'd be a marketing effort to inform the residents. So how do you, would you also reach out to those people that are not, that currently have their contracts with another supplier, or?
No, because they've already made the decision. We don't bother them.
Okay, so it would be up to the town to let those residents know that this thing exists?
Well, there'll be plenty of information around that they'll know just because of that information that's out there. And again, we put together a marketing plan with the Board of Selectmen, and we go over, what they want to do. We do flyers, we have a video that we use. We had one situation in a town where there were a number of large non-English speaking populations. We did marketing in 6 languages. We did Portuguese, Spanish, French, Arabic, Khmer, and Vietnamese, so that everybody in those larger non-English speaking populations would be able to see what's happening.
Any other questions? Thank you very much for coming. This is very interesting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much
Thank you.
for your time.
And members of the board. Again, any questions, on my card is my cell phone number. I'm available at any time to answer questions. Please don't hesitate to call.
Thank you very much.
John.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a
you,
good
John,
night.
so much. Thank you, you too. Next item on the agenda are the remaining warrants from the zoning board. Alex and Bill, you're on. So we got through the zoning update, the map. And I think there are,
Map, signs,
yep, we did the map signs, ice house,
traffic.
traffic, So we have, and I know that these are going to change considerably, I think, because your meeting is when, the 22nd?
Yes.
Is there any way you can speed that up? Because very honestly, if these are going to be unrecognizable after they come out of your committee meeting, I can't guarantee that we're going to be able to give them all the consideration that they might
We're going-
require.
I'm going to recommend to the board that we ask that the temporary signs be referred back to us, because I do think that the definition that the building inspector brought up needs to be changed.
Okay,
So
okay.
temporary signs, I
That was the
think,
most involved discussion we have, as I recall.
and we will do our best
Okay.
to talk to the revolving fund proponents to see if we can get the information that you suggested was necessary there.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I have a feeling that it may be that the revolving fund could be brought up in October with some,
Well, the objective is not so much to have you not consider what you think is important. The objective, I think, that we would like to try to see is coordination so that the meetings are of value to everybody, and that when they come to us, they have been vetted in enough time for us to make recommendations to the town meeting. Because I think one of the concerns that have been voiced by members of the committee, and this is not directed at you, this is just kind of an issue that I think we face, is that as the warrants are presented to us, we occasionally, or more often than not, I should say, run into time considerations where we have to digest a lot of information in a very, very rapid fire, and we're concerned that we don't give proper deliberation to very worthy things that come before us, as you all have. And we don't certainly want to give short shrift to anything before we send it to the town meeting. And I know everybody appreciates that.
I thought the discussion last week was great.
It was.
And,
I agree.
It was
Yeah.
extremely helpful, and
Good. If that's the case, then we're accomplishing something for everybody, and I think that's something that everybody's happy about. But anyway, take it away, it's all yours.
all right, we have two articles. One of, they're both citizens petitions.
Yeah.
You don't, let's just talk about the yacht club.
Right. They're probably coming in Wednesday.
Right, and
Yeah.
that's not a planning board issue.
Right.
That has to do with the selectmen.
Right.
So the other one is, I think, the zoning moratorium. Is there one other than that, Bill? No. It's just the zoning moratorium.
This one was interesting to some of us when we were looking at it, because what generated it and how it came through, et cetera. And I'm interested, since you've been doing this for a number of years, I'm interested in your mutual perspective and collective wisdom on this.
Where this came from?
And what the intent is and how you would deal with it, et cetera.
Well, you'll understand that if you look at the signatories, a number of them live near their nursery.
I noticed that, yeah.
And as you may recall, we passed a zoning article that allowed for landscaping businesses in residential zones, and a number of people think that their nursery operations are inconsistent with what a residential zone should be. And I think that that is the basis of this article, and but they don't seem to focus. They're talking about new zoning changes that might do things in do commercial things in residential areas. And asking that the planning board do a comprehensive study of these commercial uses and the activities, and whether they should be allowed, whether they should be introduced, and exactly what these additional commercial uses are, I don't know. It isn't landscaping business use because it's already there. I mean, we can look at the zoning, the uses in the zoning. I think they want us to look at the uses in the zoning and see what we think about them. And I looked at the uses in the zoning this evening. And they've been there for a long time. Landscaping business use is the most recent. And it's subject to a special permit, and we spent a long time doing their special permit and trying to balance the interests of neighbors in a residential zone and the operators of a nursery landscaping business that's been there for a long time.
Can I interrupt and just ask the question without questioning or even going towards the motivation of the moratorium, which we can all conjecture? What would be involved precisely in what they're asking for to allow sufficient time to engage in a planning process to address the effects of commercial uses and/or activities in residential zones, and to enact new bylaws that impose reasonable safeguards to protect the residential character of residential zoning districts? What would you have to do that?
Well, for one thing, you can't have a moratorium on new zoning and then ask us to enact new zoning.
Okay, okay. I mean, I imagined that would be the case, but I wanted to have that
Saying that
stated
the
clearly.
planning board should, or saying that the town can't do any zoning. I mean, to zone a moratorium, I guess, or I guess it isn't zoning, but you zone that the town meeting can't consider zoning articles. I would suppose that if someone came up with a zoning article, the town meeting could, even if there were a moratorium in place, the town meeting would have to consider the article. And if they pass it, it
Yes.
would be sort of an implicit revocation of the moratorium. I just don't know that you can.
There are
Town meeting
contradictions.
can
Yeah,
say
there are
this is, we're
contradictions.
not going to, we don't want any future town meetings to do whatever it is they don't want them to do. I just don't think that that's legal.
Is there an issue behind this that I'm not getting?
If there is, I don't know what it is. Bill, you're the issue man. Any issues there?
And the 5:15 to Zuma just came in.
I think there's also a sentence in here that says, would permit introduction or continuation of any commercial uses. They want to look at even the continuing uses that are
Existing.
taking place. Right.
Yeah,
I mean, we have
Is that
non-conforming.
possible, or is it legal? I guess it's two questions. Is it
Not sure
possible?
that it's legal,
Is it
that-
legal?
We can look at it.
We can look at it
Yeah,
because we
sure,
look
we
at
can look at
everything.
anything, right, got it.
But once you are grandfathered in,
Yeah.
you have the protection of
the statutes,
existing
right,
zoning.
Right.
Your status is such that you are pre-existing non-conforming. You go to change something there, now,
That opens you up, yes.
but that's not necessarily a continuation, that's a change in the commercial use.
Okay.
But to run a store, the store's been there since 1880 or 1870s in one case. It's in a residential neighborhood. You're going to just say, well, I don't want stores anymore? That one has been there long enough that it's kind of the fabric of that neighborhood.
Yes.
I mean, when the planning board takes up one of these new zoning articles, there is a debate over the article itself. There's the debate that goes with the special permit that goes to that particular zoning. So if you look back at any of the ones that have taken place in the last 6 years, we won't go back too far. Nothing happens for 4 or 5 months minimum with the debate that goes on. They keep coming back. There's plenty of time for neighbors. It's always posted in the newspaper at least twice before the hearing starts. Our meetings are 99% televised. You can catch them on the web. We get quoted in somebody watches it on the web and then quotes back in the letters that come in to the board. So we know that we're getting input from the butters.
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just wondering, because of the area of the people that have signed the petition, if there was something going on particular to that area that would cause them to want you to review everything
I
since...
think they just don't like, I think some of them don't like one of the special permits that was granted.
Oh, okay, all right.
And a
Already
moratorium
ready.
would solve that
Yes.
problem.
No,
That's what I was saying. I'm not trying to be sarcastic.
No,
but-
no, it's
I know.
there already, so
Yes.
no, it's not going to, but they think it won't happen to somebody else somewhere else.
Well, the permit is subject to renewal, the one they're thinking about.
3 years.
And so, I mean, it isn't as though these zoning, someone once said these zoning bylaws were all enacted in 1938 and have been sitting there gathering dust ever since. And it's time someone looked at them, and it's, we look at these things all the time, and there have been lots of changes made. And I remember when I was fairly new to the board, we had a committee that was charged with going through the bylaws and making proposed changes, and we didn't come up with a great deal that we thought was pressing.
I think there's 6 pages in the back of the zoning bylaws that are amendments that have taken place over time. So it's not a stagnant document from 1938.
Tom?
I mean, I see this as a very dangerous precedent to set. It's, first of all, it ties the hands of the planning board. Virtually, the planning board really couldn't consider any zoning changes. So if, like Alex says, if something comes up before town meeting, you can get some very bad zoning passed because theoretically, the planning board couldn't hear it.
Right.
There couldn't be a public hearing process. There couldn't be anything theoretically during this moratorium period.
Well, I think they're seeking to bind the town meeting, saying we don't want the town meeting to.
And I don't think you can do
in
that.
the
I agree with you. I don't
future,
think you can do that.
No, I think that is,
Yeah.
when your town meeting is over, you basically, that town meeting is over, and the next town meeting is, is not going to be bound by stuff that is
Right.
going on at this town meeting.
Scott?
I do, just again, I want to echo what a lot of people have said here about the legality of it. If there's any possibility for town council to review this before it goes before town meeting, or before we even go further for consideration on this article, I think that needs to be clarified. The other piece is there going to be a time for these petitioners to come forward and make some sort of, a presentation on this, and maybe some of the questions that are coming out tonight can
Yes,
be
I would
answered,
expect them in
so.
the next couple of weeks. I mean, our agendas are posted. I will be specific in the next couple of agendas to invite whomever would like to come, because this is the next 2 or 3 meetings will be those that are specifically for this item and the Milton Landing. So I'm expecting people will come Wednesday and next Monday, theoretically.
I mean, if there is one particular issue that's out there, let's address that particular issue and
Yeah.
not the entire zoning.
I think the idea of getting an opinion of council, I'll ask Mike how to do that, and maybe we can have John Flynn come to see us.
These all go to him anyways?
I would understand, yes, I understand that to be the
Just
case, but it'd be interesting to
upfront.
hear what he has to say about it. If we are obliged to recommend or not recommend, I'd be interested to have his advice.
We are obliged to recommend and not recommend.
Yeah, so I would want his, I think we need his advice on this.
Because I think this would effectively nullify the planning board.
Yeah.
It basically just says,
During that
all you
moratorium
could,
period.
yeah, whatever,
But there's no stated
whatever
moratorium
moratorium is
either.
defined, because there's no end date
Indefinite.
specified.
And-
It just says you have to go back and look at the zoning
Well,
bylaws.
we could.
And then that's it, go off to a library, and that's what
we
you're gonna do
could-
for the rest
Well,
of
we
it.
could probably do
it's kind
this
of
fairly
open-ended.
quickly.
That's what I mean, there's no
the
end
issue,
date.
yeah.
It
Yeah.
ties their hands, and it says they can't,
Yes.
issue any permits, any variances, you can't hear anything,
Hence the reason for my question, how would you do something
Yeah.
like this? It sounds like it would be,
as well as
very
binding
complex.
future
And that
the
too.
town meetings, which I don't believe you're allowed to do, is like Congress can't
Yeah.
obligate a future Congress to do
Exactly.
things.
Well, also, variances, of course, are issued by the Board of Appeals, and it might, if we tried to tell the Board of, if the planning board
Yeah.
tried to tell the Board of Appeals what to do about variances, I mean, we make recommendations at times, but we understand it's their province.
Yes.
Actually, under a statute, which
This would effectively
But not-
stop any
but
development
not,
in the town.
I mean,
Anywhere.
I
It's a little
think the
broad.
town council will
Yes.
have plenty to say about this.
Seems
But
like there's
did you
a
have a
lot of
question?
projects in the
Question for you.
pipeline.
So I understand this a little better. This nursery is zoned to be a store, right?
It's zoned to operate a landscaping business, and
And a nursery.
the nursery business is what operates the store.
Okay.
And the
This
landscaping
has been there for years.
business,
This has been there for years.
Since the mid-'80s.
the nursery has.
In the 30 years.
And the landscaping business has been a increasing use because landscaping is an increasingly important part of the business of such.
This
But they
is-
were clear
this-
for that, they have the zoning for that and everything.
This is what we grow, we'll plant it for you. That's kind of where this came from.
Okay, and these individuals would like you to change their zoning? Is that what I'm?
Well, they don't like the zoning that, they don't like the landscaping business zoning. They think that their rights as residents in a residential zone are being adversely affected. And they would like some sort of what they consider to be desirable relief. And of course, the business takes a different view of it, and
Has that ever happened before, where someone has changed the zoning for a business?
well,
Because of the
I mean,
residents?
some of the clubs have neighbors around certain clubs say that there's too much noise or the music goes on too long. It's when you have different uses in a neighborhood, you sometimes have conflicts.
Tom?
That's why much of those, because this town is well over 90% residential. Always has been.
Like you said, it's gonna set a bad precedent.
Right, I mean,
Well, yeah.
and there's certainly
All
need for some
development, not just
commercial, and there is some, pre-existing non-conforming commercial in residential neighborhoods, but much of the zoning that gets done now, when it's not as of right zoning, is done by special permit, is done by, where you can write things into it. If you wrote a static zoning bylaw to either allow or disallow something, it still wouldn't preclude the special permit process.
Unless you do it so that you can do it without a special
permit,
As of
and then
right.
you get unintended consequences
Right.
because you can't write anything into it. It's as of
It's not
right.
restrictive, yeah.
There's very
Well,
little.
this business is always evolving. So it's sort of entrenching
I see.
and growing, and so it isn't what it started out to be. So that's
But I think this is
basically.
something that we confront because in so many ways, Milton has been residential. It was a country town for, even when I was growing up, it was pretty countrified. And what businesses, they were really kind of embedded in the neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And there's
Yeah.
no way you could get around that.
Yeah.
There was the only really commercial areas were East Milton Square and then a little bit around Central Avenue and at Milton Village. And anything else was kind of, a drugstore perhaps in the neighborhood or a grocery store, and that
You
was
had a
it.
Pepsi
We
plant.
saw
And they had
that
the
on the
Up on
map.
Randolph Avenue, that's true, but that was really it, and the Bent's Cookie, and
Yeah.
and Walter Baker, of course, that disappeared in the 60s.
You're bringing
but
this
anyway.
way back.
But that, yeah, but you're going way back, but the
Yeah.
point is that these neighborhoods were just that, neighborhoods, and businesses that came up went before the zoning board and the planning board, and all of a sudden you had issues with neighbors liking or not liking, and this is what makes the world go round. You like some things, your neighbor doesn't, and you somehow have
Right.
to appeal to reason to make it work.
When they were
As a
when
town.
when they were initially a business back in those days, now they're evolving. You said they're evolving. the allowance or the zoning for that original business, does that allow it to evolve with time, or does it have to stay confined in that?
Well,
Stay.
State, right, so they would have a sort of a legitimate.
Depends on which one we're talking about. We do this, we put this into different PUDs, planned unit developments. In the case that we're talking about without talking about, you're starting with a nursery that was a farm.
Okay.
You're talking about a nursery that started growing bushes and trees and flowers, and now they're planting those for you. Now they're creating a walkway so that you move through that same garden. Now, when you do that, you have a family, and different members of the family have different things that they do better than another one. So the business evolves, and it's that evolution. In this case, we've taken and gone from variances built on top of other variances, and they all have special permits that go with them. And every time they put one of those, we finally got to the point to say, what about just do this once, and let's stop having to send everything that we do back to the zoning board of appeals. Let's have a very public process to it. So we designed zoning for a property that could be duplicated someplace else, isn't right now, but that particular entity has their store, they have their growing fields, they have their landscape business, and everything about it is built into our zoning. So we tell them how many trucks they can have, we give them hours of operation, we control everything, hoping that all of the issues that we get are in the zoning, and it should help and appease the surrounding abutters.
And
The surrounding abutters, do they get a chance to
Comment?
comment
Yeah,
while,
well,
before
the
you?
process,
And during,
That was a
Well,
long process. Yeah.
that was a year and a half.
This situation came about because there were variances, and the variances went to court. And a landscaping business was being conducted here, and under variances, and people thought it could be conducted under variances, but it turned out that the variances didn't cover the landscaping business that was being conducted. So the zoning that was written didn't attempt to do anything new, but attempted to legitimize the activities that were currently going on, and had been considered legal under variances, and there was a court case that says, no, you can't do it under variances. And so the zoning was adopted to basically preserve what was the status quo. It's, if you look at our special permit, it covers just, I mean, we do the best we can, but perfection is just not part of the process.
And a business is gonna evolve anyway, I mean, in order to
Most
survive,
do,
but it
yes.
has, I mean,
Most
it has to
successful
sort
ones
of-
do, yes.
Right, but you can't really, hinder the lives
For that
of the other
theoretical
people.
business in question, this would apply to more than just that recut.
Yeah.
This would apply to everything.
Everything.
Any development,
Yeah, this would be,
business or
This
mixed
goes to
use or
site plan
anything.
approval, this goes to subdivisions.
Yeah.
so it would basically call a halt to
Housing
almost
developments.
everything in town?
Anything.
Would.
Yeah, this would
So it
involve
would just be
anything in town.
static, nothing happens
So it's not-
until,
Well, that's
see, right.
that's like controlling change.
that's, yeah, this
Change
would
is
be,
gonna happen.
Not,
this would
not
make a very
controlling,
interesting
stopping
discussion
dead.
at town meeting, for sure.
Yeah, it's a good discussion to have.
Yeah.
at a
Very
town
interesting
meeting.
discussion at town meeting for.
And I
for
think
sure.
the
Lengthy
town council will
Lengthy
get,
discussion, my God.
Yes,
Yes, yeah, yeah.
Several times.
Okay.
yes.
So, as you take, you're obliged to take this up. What is your sense of how this would
my
proceed?
sense is that the planning board is going to recommend that this article be denied by the town meeting.
Okay,
That's all we can do.
that's your
is
sense.
Make
It's
our
not-
recommendation.
We
to
obviously
the
can't
town
vote on
meeting.
it until it goes through your your
Well,
committee.
You
we'll-
could, but.
Well, it's
We
not
have to
wise
vote on it
because we
again
don't know
if
what it's
there's
gonna look like.
substantial changes.
I think that I have I can't speak for the board, but I have a feeling that the board may see fit to recommend a denial.
Okay.
But I just want to clarify that this isn't a planning board article.
This is a citizen.
This is a
so we
citizen's
actually-
position,
we
so it does
actually-
need to be considered
we will-
independently of the planning board.
Definitely, yeah. I would prefer to not vote on it tonight until we get a recommendation from the planning board, which
Right.
is, and potentially hear from the sponsors of this as well.
Yep.
Yes.
Petitioners
It's
are
a
welcome.
zoning article that requires a public hearing by the planning board.
Planning board, for
The
sure.
planning board is
So I'm
required
assuming they
to
will
give
come to you.
An opinion.
Their recommendation.
And we can't move up the date because it's already been advertised.
I understand. This is, what my comment to you earlier was, in future, we should try to coordinate as we can to make sure that the flow of work moves
I
in
think
an
we're
orderly
gonna have a
fashion.
pretty good flow here.
Well, we have a good flow here, but I'm just talking about as we get to the point of putting the warrant together, we often run up against deadlines, which are very hard to manage sometimes because there's an enormous volume of data and requests that come through the committee, the warrant committee. Tom?
I don't know if anybody knows the answer to the question, but as I look at the citizen petition, what's before us just has the bare number of signatures necessary to get it on the warrant 10.
But
Do we know if there were more signatures in this?
This is what was turned into the clerk.
Yeah, and that's all they need.
To the select.
That's all I need.
That's all they
Yeah,
need.
That's all I need. I'm just
They just stopped
curious.
it.
Usually, usually they will turn in all the signatures and, so they
Usually
separate
They
them.
stopped when they had they
Try
got
to
the
get 3 or
threshold.
4 more
Yeah.
in case somebody's either gets denied
Or it's
or
not
somebody
registered.
decides at the last minute to withdraw their name.
Or if they're not a registered voter.
Yeah,
correct.
did we receive certification that all these were registered? Yeah, we did for the Milton Yacht Club, the other citizen petition.
They
I
have
didn't
been,
recall one.
I have not received that they are certified yet, but I'm sure.
I mean, I presume they are since it was forwarded to us,
I have a feeling that they will be, but
but
we
being
can
just the
request
bare
that.
number.
Does anybody have any more questions for Alex and Bill?
No.
Thank you very much.
Well, thanks for having us in.
Thank you for coming in.
Did you not want to do the,
The landing, the Milton Landing does, do you have, let me ask you this before you go. The yacht club, Milton Yacht Club's lease, what is the interest of the planning board there?
Well,
Is there any?
it's just the interest of the members as residents. And,
Right.
I'm sure that everyone has a personal opinion of,
Will they come to you, for example? Are they required to come to you?
No.
I didn't think so. That's
It's,
one reason why.
that lease is with the selectmen and
Yeah.
the park.
Selectmen and the Parks and Rec, right, and I believe they're coming Wednesday.
If,
But if there was anything that you had to say about it, we'd be interested to hear, but since,
I could only offer my own personal view, and I probably should not.
I'm gonna get in trouble.
we put you on the spot that way, we asked you to do enough.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair,
yes,
if we
please,
wanted
Doug.
some sort of opinion or validation for the Milton Yacht Club citizen petition, would we want to seek one from the Master Plan Implementation Committee? Because
Yes.
that's what seems to be
Yeah,
prevailing,
I
not the
would think
planning
so, and I
board.
would imagine that this, when the selectmen come, they will, I don't know if they're gonna bring along whoever, but, yeah,
I think there's a meeting Wednesday
Wednesday.
on this,
Yeah.
public bill.
You're doing this one Wednesday?
Wednesday or Monday, we're flexible on that. I have a feeling it's gonna take two meetings to get through this, so I'm imagining that we'll get people to come. I've certainly, the agenda leaves it open for Wednesday and next Monday as well, that has yet to be published, next Monday's agenda.
We have a joint meeting of the
The selectmen
selectmen and the planning board
On this.
on
Wednesday.
Wednesday. Right, and I'm assuming they'll come next Monday then.
I have a master plan implementation committee meeting next Monday.
Oh, boy. Well, somebody's going to have to come because this committee is obliged to make a recommendation, and I'm hoping somebody will be able to be flexible enough to show up for our meeting too. Because we have finite resources and finite time. We have a
Right.
number of other issues.
Do you know if
I
this
hear
is
you.
gonna be discussed
I actually
Monday?
think that it may be better for us to show later on Monday
Oh, that's
Up to you.
because they
I think that can be done.
Because
Yeah.
that is again, a master plan and selectmen meeting with,
All right,
planning
guess,
board and master plan
guess,
meeting.
yeah,
with the-
guesstimate on the time then, because we've set aside 45 minutes for presentations.
It's a 7 o'clock meeting, correct?
7 o'clock. Is there a 7 o'clock meeting as
7
well?
and 7.
7 and 7. But they're here in the town hall, yes?
They might be
No, they're
over at
at-
council.
For the
meeting.
council on
Council on
aging.
Aging.
All right, 5-minute walk.
So I'll see him at 7:30. It's fine.
Well, they've got to meet.
Yeah, they've actually got to.
My guess is that there's going to be public comment on that meeting as well, so it may extend.
So what, 7:45, 8 o'clock?
That's going to be a long meeting.
Try to drag Cheryl out of there, and I'll go with Cheryl, and the rest of them can stay over there and
Okay,
handle the rest.
all right. As long as we have somebody to give us information as required, because we do
Yep.
want to have opinions, and unfortunately, time is finite for all of us, and I guess we're all trying to get the same things done simultaneously. So this will be an interesting tap dance.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your
Thanks,
time.
Alex.
We'll look forward to seeing you next week.
Yeah.
Terrific.
Thanks.
Good night. Thank you.
Right.
Okay. Next item on our agenda will be to coordinate subcommittee invitation, not subcommittee invitation, the different departments. We talked about this a little bit. We will, over the next 3 meetings, try to have the department heads come in and I'll rely a little bit on Mike. I'll ask him for his advice and his coordination on this, to have the schools, what works for the schools and the school committee finance sub-chairs, and the DPW, which is meeting tomorrow. We'll coordinate all of these things over the next 3 meetings to make sure that we get everything so we can start to pull this together in a couple of weeks. So that's where we stand. Our next item is new business. Has anybody anything to bring up for the good of the order?
I do.
Kevin.
Just a question, and only because I'm not sure that it should have been for these guys. But the question of planning, right? We deal with the zoning issues, et cetera, but when we think of the town of Milton, and I think, Tom, you mentioned it was 90% residential versus 10%. So if we're thinking about growth, tax base growth on the commercial side versus the residential side, schools needing additional resources and space, I mean, which group in town is kind of dealing with that
You mean the vision
strategically?
thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind
Strategic
of,
planning.
Yeah,
The-
it's
the
planning
planning-
board, but-
Expanding the commercial districts?
or just thinking about it, where the new growth is coming, and can it help support the town's needs?
Does the master plan come through the selectmen? Are they responsible for oversight there? I know they have a hand in it.
Well, the master plan was passed.
Right.
So it's been approved. I believe that was joint planning board and,
Selectmen.
but at this point, it's in the implementation stage.
Right.
There has been an implementation committee set up.
And who peoples that? Is that independent? It's not representative from the different other boards?
It's an independent.
Okay. So there's no cross-membership? right?
Well, there is, yeah.
Is there?
There's a selectman on that.
So the board is appointed by the Board of Selectmen.
I see, okay.
So they fall under the.
I apologize for my lack of
Yeah.
knowledge
I
there.
had to actually look on our website. to
good.
find out.
So there's
You're way ahead of me,
So
good.
there's a group that's charged with the town master plan.
Implementing the town.
Yeah,
Implementing
yeah.
it.
And it's kind of a misnomer because, the master plan is a multi-year,
Yeah.
this is a
General
basic
guideline.
guideline, yeah, exactly. And, meant to be, looked at and in terms of as things develop, are we developing in accordance with the plan we set up? So it's not meant to be, okay, here it is, let's get it all done.
Yep, yep.
Yeah,
That's not the
It's
goal.
not carved in stone, yes,
Yeah.
it's the general.
Right. It's
sort of
living
vision
document.
Right.
guideline of how we'd like
Yes.
things to go, but
Doesn't
exactly.
necessarily
Once the
always go
boots hits
that
the
way, right?
ground.
Yeah.
it could
But
take a
necessarily for growth in this town, I mean, we're a fully built-out town, so if all we do is do single-family dwellings, there's very little
Limited.
growth. I mean, there's very little opportunity for growth. I mean, the only opportunity for growth is is, more
Multifamily.
multi-family kinds of things, the things we're seeing at, the St. Pius, the things we're seeing up on,
Canton Ave.
Canton Ave, the,
Carberry.
Carberry Estate, those types of things. And you're starting to see a lot more of those things because the cost of land is so expensive that you just price single-family houses
Right up.
out of the market. Nobody can afford them but the rich.
Sure.
So,
Quick question for you.
Yes.
That East Milton development, is that still being spoken about, or?
I haven't
It's
seen.
still there,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's still there. I haven't seen a lot of
This is still in the works, as
discussion.
working groups
But yes,
trying
it
to
is.
design.
Short answer is it is.
To
Right.
develop the
But I
final
don't
vision
know how
of it
much
and
progress
so
has been made or being
And they
made.
will come back,
They would go to the
They have to go
board
to
of
the planning board.
select.
Yeah, that will-
It depends on which
And there's
path
there's a
they
couple of
want to
different
go.
ways, yeah.
Yeah.
They could go for a friendly 40B, which they've talked about,
To go to the board of select.
which would go to the Board of Selectmen,
Right.
yes.
And if they don't want to do that, then they'd go
They
to
can
the
go to
planning
the
board.
Special permit,
Yeah.
Right,
yeah. Or the third is just they can go 40B.
right. And then that
But the
goes through
residents
that.
have
Which is to go to the state.
And the residents have been very vocal about it.
And they've
Right.
been
That's
working as a working group, residents
Yeah.
and the developers, to
Yeah.
compromise on
Yeah.
sort of the final vision, which is they've been working on for weeks.
Scott,
I just wanted to revisit, we talked about setting some times for the different departments to come in. Are we actually going to do that tonight? Or is that something that you're going to figure out a
I'm going to
timeframe and
coordinate that with
email?
Mike. I'm going to coordinate with that with Mike. I've already talked to Glenn Pavlicek, but the biggest one is the schools, obviously.
Yeah.
And I talked to him today, and we'll confer about the availability of the chair of the school committee and the finance subcommittee of the school committee, so they can come in together.
I just asked for just my own preparation purposes to give us a day or two to say when,
Absolutely.
who's coming.
Right.
So we
Definitely.
can.
Well,
we
it'll be
can-
posted on the agenda.
Right.
So yes, absolutely. But that's exactly where we are now, because all the subcommittee work, with the exception of DPW, is effectively done, and then what other ones have not met have got their questions. So that part of the process is complete, and we're pretty much on schedule for that.
Do we know if anybody who and if is coming in this Wednesday, or?
This Wednesday, nobody's coming in Wednesday. Nobody was able,
From
but
the
it's gonna be,
departments.
it'll be, yeah, from the departments. But next week, I think we can count on, certainly Monday night, we'll have a few in there, and then we'll take it from there.
Do we need,
Wednesday may be touchy for some people, but.
do we need to discuss anything of the agenda? I believe the agenda for Wednesday's meeting this week has been posted. Do we need any, isn't there, I'm trying to remember it after I saw there, wasn't there an open meeting of like 7:15, 8:15 or something?
Yes,
of
particularly for the Milton Landing people to
Yes,
come.
so is there any, since it's going to be, who is,
Well, there's a community group, the 88 Wharf
Yep.
Street, and then the
The yacht
yacht
club.
club themselves, and whoever else can come from selectmen or planning board.
okay, and that's who it's going to be open to?
Effectively,
Okay.
yeah. So we allotted enough time so we can get as many of them in. Now, some of them may not be able to make it, et cetera,
Yes.
at which point we'll bring them into to other meetings. We still have enough time for that.
Just another thing, for the budgets that aren't gonna take a lot of conversations, the bigger ones, can we address some of those on Wednesday and kind of take them off our to-do list for long term?
I think that's a very good idea.
Yeah, we could potentially,
Yeah.
the boards and, we had no,
Right.
there were no,
There's really no questions,
Yeah,
and
there's
some
no
of
real
them, some of
questions.
them are very perfunctory. I mean, the general insurance and
Yeah.
other things are,
I think-
that's there.
the only thing as I look at all these budgets is, for the most part, we're looking at 4.5%.
Yeah.
With a couple of exceptions, 4.5% wage increases.
Right.
Yeah,
And I'd kind of
mostly
like to see a
driven by-
breakdown of how that is, how much of that is, the. Contractual wage increase, how much is, step increases, and how much is longevity increases. Because it's kind of hard when you look at the budget, because you really don't see what the starting salary
Breakdown
is,
is,
you know?
right.
Will the town manager, the town administrator have that to involve, those things?
That detail?
Yeah.
If the
I-
accountant wouldn't know, I think
Town
the
accountant,
assistant,
yeah,
Amy would have
at
it.
least the
Amy
assistant
would
town
have
administrator who deals more with personnel would have that, one of the two would have it.
Well,
Right.
I would think Amy would have it for sure.
Yeah.
She'd have to have it.
So that might make it easier
Yeah.
if they want that.
Okay.
Well, I guess, again, piggybacking on that, when we look at the actual budgetary information, is there any way going forward, potentially into next year, to say, this is what was approved at town meeting, this is what your step increase is, this is what, to come up with this year's amount.
Yeah.
Presented before we have to dig into it and find that information out. Is there any way, I don't know if that's something that, it's just a
Certainly.
administrative thing that
Certainly,
we can
yeah,
have
we absolutely
changed?
can ask,
There
absolutely.
is something we can ask them to do afterwards, like mid-year to do a maintenance exercise.
And for me,
Projecting forward, what does it cost you to do your stuff, level funding, and then just add on.
Right.
the
Which I think
contractual
more
obligations.
difficult, too. In any given year, you may have a lot of unions not under contract.
Yes.
So you'll have everything in a set aside
Yeah.
on that particular budget, and then, if it gets settled,
And in certain years, a lot of them come up for
right, then you see it all coming in and.
negotiation again.
And it just makes it harder to analyze, that's all.
Yeah. I think we were gonna meet with one of the commissions or board on Thursday.
Yes.
And so we may take them as representative of all of them, but they basically would be finished, and you could probably knock all of the, most of them out
Yeah,
Right.
at the time.
absolutely. Okay, I will be in touch with Mike, and we'll coordinate all these things, and Wednesday evening is our next meeting.
Can I ask one more question?
Yes,
Have we looked at the budget spreadsheet at all yet? I know it's out, I know that.
It's out, we have not looked at it, I think that's one of the things we can consider in the next couple of meetings as
Yeah,
well.
getting that up and,
Get that done, right.
yeah, it'd be nice if we could, I have a copy of it, but, only because I asked for one. Maybe get that out to the rest of the committee, just so they can.
I think that's a good idea, we can get that done. And with any luck, we'll have a new clerk in place by if not next meeting, then a week from tonight, so that'll be very good. It'll make life a little easier for a few of us.
For Gene as well.
So if there is no other new business, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all very much.
Thank
Good
you.
night, see you
Thank you.
Wednesday.